I think there are probably two very important things that have happened. One is that the Israeli regime has failed militarily, and that the resistance, whether Hamas or Islamic Jihad or their allies, have been able to create a defense mechanism, an elaborate and sophisticated defense mechanism and infrastructure that has prevented this very small piece of land from falling. If we go back to history, the Israelis would invade and go deep into Egypt and take the Suez Canal. Now, after over a year, and well over a year, the Israelis are stuck. The second, and I think this is equally important, is that the Israeli regime has destroyed its image across the world. Not only has its military's image been destroyed, its intelligence capabilities, the myth surrounding its intelligence capabilities, its military capabilities, not only has that been demolished, but its image as a so-called nation has been completely devastated. It is despised across the world, even although I can't really comment about your country. But if we look at the mood in India uh, last year, which is a very different India from the India of the non-aligned movement era, where India led much of the global South in in Indian liberation was an inspiration to many people across the world. India last year, the mood there was very pro-Israeli, I would argue. All right, at least that's my perception through my interaction with different Indian TV channels, which I subsequently refrained from interacting with afterwards. But from my understanding, the mood in India even today is significantly different from what it was last year. And without a doubt, the daily images, the hourly images of atrocities and genocide have impacted people in India. Outside of India, I think it has done much more damage to the Israeli regime. I've traveled to China multiple times, to Russia, and to other regions in other countries in our region, and the mood has shifted dramatically. So the Israeli regime has lost public support across the world. And people who in the past considered it to be just a normal country and this to be a conflict between two people have been doing research. And they've been seeing that one side is killing children, raping prisoners, carrying out endless airstrikes on civilian targets, carrying out daily massacres, more than daily massacres, multiple massacres every day, and now expanding that to Lebanon and then trying to expand that to Iran. That has demolished the regime. And I think that the consequences for that will be enormous, and they really can't be calculated in dollars or euros or yuan or anything like that. I think the legitimacy of the regime in the eyes of the world has been seriously questioned, and in the eyes of many, it is not legitimate.
You made 2 points there. One is about the Israeli military deterrence, and the second is about international consensus. I want to build on your comment on international consensus, given the latest news we are hearing is that Israeli parliament has banned with these two laws the 74-year-old UNRWA, United Nations Relief and Work Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East, which was created basically to deal with the refugee problem that was created by the Nakba and the first genocide in 1948. And they don't like it because the UNRWA continues to not just provide aid, but also register the refugee, which keeps the refugee problem alive, which Netanyahu in its very own speech has said that UNRWA has to be dismantled given it keeps the refugee question alive. Israel's own allies, Western allies, obviously Ireland, Spain, Norway, Switzerland, but also Japan, South Korea, Australia, they have condemned the ban of UNRWA in Israeli territories, which should have massive ramification in both occupied West Bank and Gaza. Can you comment on the recent banning, but also place them in the larger context of what you just commented?
Well, first, let me voice my skepticism about the West. Europe, the EU, the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and of course the United States will stand by the Israeli regime until they exterminate the last Palestinian. As things stand, Europe and the United States are fully prepared for the full extermination of the Palestinian people. The BBC, CNN, Fox, it doesn't matter. The Guardian, the New York Times, the liberal left, the right, they will all justify the atrocities. They will all find a way to whitewash the crimes. Their diplomats will be silent where they need to be silent. They will make light condemnations here and there whenever necessary, but they will allow the extermination, the full extermination of the people of Gaza to wipe out the whole population. And then if the Israelis go after the West Bank, they will allow for that to happen as well. Under no circumstances do I see the West blocking extermination. That is how depraved the West is. However, since there is a huge change coming in the West and taking place among ordinary people, and especially young people, I don't know where things are going to end. I don't know what will happen. I'm still skeptical because the powers that exist in the West are very deeply entrenched, and the West is not a democracy. These countries have never been democracies, but they are by no means democracies today. And the very fact that your choice is between Hillary Clinton and then Trump and then Biden and Trump and then Harris and Trump, if that's the will of the people, then I think we don't really need democracy. But the youth across the board are awake to what's going on, whether it's in Australia or in Canada. But there's a huge amount of intimidation. People lose their jobs, people are threatened, the media, the establishment, they have a lot of power and a lot of influence and a lot of control. So, but at least for the time being, I can say with confidence that any resistance to what the Israelis are doing will not be very significant. The West may resist to a degree on this particular law, but we are already seeing the starvation of northern Gaza. Northern Gaza, as we speak, has no food. It's been going on for weeks. I mean, imagine if just the BBC and the BBC and CNN are just two examples, but I fully recognize that the Western media, the mainstream media, the legacy media is not nearly as important as it was before. Outlets like yours have influence today, whereas they were non-existent a couple of decades ago. And mainstream media has gone downhill very fast. The evidence shows it. And also they've become more authoritarian and more openly dishonest. They've become much more like 1984 than one would have imagined even a couple of years ago, even 2-3 years ago. But much more than they really think, although they are they still know how to market sometimes, but the language and the tone and when four Israeli soldiers who were a part of a force that was going to invade Lebanon were killed, Sky News read out their names when they were and in sorrow. But the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians and Lebanese who've been killed so far, hundreds of thousands, not 40 or 50,000. Those are the official numbers of people who have been taken to the hospital and they were identified and they were killed directly as a result of injuries of war. Those who are dying of cancer because of lack of medicine or any other disease, or those who've died because of neglect, because of a lack of doctors, because the Israelis have destroyed all the hospitals, they've destroyed the infrastructure. Those who are under, whose bodies are under buildings, those God knows how many tens of thousands. It's in the hundreds of thousands. It could possibly be up to 200, 300,000 right now, just in Gaza. So the I have great skepticism because right now the Western media, uh, let's say if I was saying yes, if the BBC and CNN were to start a campaign today just for 2 weeks, 1 week, rolling coverage on northern Gaza about the situation in northern Gaza, the US government would be forced to do something. The Europeans would be forced to do something out of embarrassment. But they won't do that because the Western media is a part of this apparatus. They will allow the Israelis to get away with a Holocaust. So I'm not optimistic that the Europeans will do anything big. They may slow things down. They may be forced to take a stand against the Israelis on this particular issue. But when we look at northern Gaza, we already know where the Europeans stand and what they stand for.
I want to stay with this discussion about the US or the Western liberal or left liberal media, not just because you have engaged with them for the last 1 year at least in a very passionate manner, but also given how important is it that they're complicit in manufacturing consent for this genocide. I mean, I remember 2003, I think the International Court of Tribunal for Rwanda declared that radio, television, communication was complicit in inciting genocide in the 1994 Rwandan genocide. That was essentially when the genocide entered, basically media entered the scrutiny of genocide. And when I read the New York Times, for instance, on October 12th, just like 4 or 5 days after October 7th, the horrible Bret Stephens, who wrote an article in the 20 years of Iraq invasion saying why I still support the Iraq invasion, wrote that Gaza remains a mortal risk to the existence of Israel. And then you run through the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, many like Max Boot and others saying it's Israel stands on the side of fight for barbarism, fight against barbarism. And then the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal consistent, and the Washington Post writing that it's ultimately Hamas leadership, if they are not eliminated, that would lead to the death of both Palestinians and Israelis. You have been at the forefront of confronting some of these narratives. Piers Morgan, Sky News are more well known. Can you tell us a little bit about what your experience in engaging with these television media kind of celebrities, how their mind works and how they are complicit in manufacturing this genocide?
Well, I haven't been on many times. The few times that I've been on, I think some of them have gone viral. So um, people may think that I'm actually on more often than I really am. And I think that's important in itself. I haven't been on American media, as far as I know, since the atrocities began. CNN or MSNBC or ABC or Fox News, they've never invited me on a live program. Only once, I think, one media channel wanted a few sound bites, and since I had worked with them before, and I know how, and I saw how they manipulated the interview and just took like unimportant sentence or two of what I said and carried on with their own narrative, I didn't even respond. But I used to, at times I would be on CNN. I haven't been on CNN or other outlets. So I think that itself is quite revealing. And the BBC or Sky News I've been on a few times, or Piers Morgan. But one thing that I can say, but I should be careful because I don't want to hurt anyone, is that often the people who contact me for interviews, in whatever outlet it is in the West, their feelings are different from what is being said on television. And I don't want to go into detail, but that is very clear to me.
Can you
And
explain a little bit what you
well,
mean?
if I explain too much, then I could get people from different places into trouble. But for example, you may contact me privately before the show or after the show and say, you know, I want you on. They keep bringing these other people on, uh, but I want the Iranian voice to be there. And then after the show, he says, I'm really sorry for what he said or what she said or what was done, or it's really disgusting, and that we're this is a horrible situation, and that sort of thing. But this isn't private conversations. So it's obvious that the people who are working in these Western media institutions, uh, that they're, whether it's radio or these radio shows that I've been on, or television, that their feelings, except for a couple, after one or two of my interviews, which went uh, viral, and uh, they were heated discussions. Uh, the uh, the person who would contact me wouldn't even respond when I asked for a link to the clip or the video to be sent to me so that I could use it on Twitter, because I've been removed from Instagram. I've been a long time ago. I've been removed from Facebook, and so I only have Twitter. But except for one or two instances, overwhelmingly, the people who interacted with me, and I have to be very careful, even those who interviewed me in private have said things different from uh, what they say on television, but that's a bit more rare. Let's just leave it at that.
Hi, my name is Ayushman. I, along with Jyotisman, have started this platform. In the last 2 years, we have tried to build content for the left and progressive forces. We have interviewed economists, historians, political commentators, and activists so far. If you have liked our content so far and want us to build an archive for the left, I have two requests for you. Please do consider donating for the cause. Link is in the description below. Also, if you are not able to do so, don't feel sad. You can always like our videos and share our videos to your comrades. Finally, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.